Okay, so this is following on from our first exercise on athletic groin pain. These are the phase 2 exercises that you need to do. In our first video, we showed you 6 exercises that you need to do probably for about 2 weeks with no real other activity other than that happening. Now what we're doing is moving into phase 2 exercises, and we're going to combine phase 1 and phase 2. We'll talk about that at the end of the video, how you will do all of this and maybe introduce some jogging. But the purpose of this exercise is to go through the exercises that you need to move on to this next level. My name is Brennan. I'm the owner of the Pain and Performance Clinic based in Lucan in Dublin. Let's start with the exercises. So exercise number 1. Purpose of this exercise is that you feel muscle activity working along here. That's what we need to try. So you're going to tie the band to something, and if we look at how Sean does it here, he's bringing his foot across the other foot. So he lifts it up about an inch or two and he's bringing it all the way across. The other point to mention is that Sean isn't drifting back off this leg like that. He's staying there. So when he puts his right foot down, his foot, his knee, his hip, his shoulder, all in one line, and the only thing moving is this here. Now, the purpose of the exercise, like we said, is that you feel it in here. If you're not feeling it with that exact technique, change the technique. So some people might have to go more upright and just bring this in like that. That's absolutely fine as long as you're feeling this here doing all the work. There will be a little bit of work on the other leg as well, and that's why we're going to do this exercise on both sides anyway. The last point to mention with this is that this is not a 10 or 12 rep thing. Most people stop way too prematurely with this and they don't stress the muscle nearly enough. This should be extremely effortful, stopping where you feel you could only do another maybe 3 or 4 reps. But if you have a decent band, you might be up on 30 reps here. You really should feel a lot of work in along that area. Exercise number 2. So you do that on one leg and then you do it directly, exact same exercise on the other leg, and then you're moving into this, which is exercise number 2, which is the running action here. So again, decent tension on the band. Both legs are involved. So you can see Sean is pushing through his right foot and his right hip is working, but we're also really working the groin and hip flexor on his left leg here. If you're struggling with balance there, you can just stabilize yourself, you can hold on to something. The priority is that you're getting all the work done through here. So let's just go through another quick example of it there. This should be quite tough, and again, an important point to mention is that you don't stop again at 10 or 15 reps. Stop when you feel you can only do another 3 or 4 reps. You should feel a huge amount of work up in that left hip flexor area. And again, you'd go straight from your left leg on to your right leg. So there are first 2 exercises in phase 2. You pair both of those together and you would try and do your 3 sets of those. That's the most challenging exercise that you've done so far in all of this, and you should feel a huge amount of work in and around this area. So our third exercise here is the iso hold into a split squat. So just setting yourself up. The purpose of this exercise is that you feel a lot of work and activity here. You'll also get a little bit in your hip and glute. You're nice and relaxed everywhere, thinking about this foot and pushing it into the ground. Your other foot is purely for balance. No real pressure going through here. It's only for balance, and you should feel a lot of work here. Holding that till it's quite effortful, could be 15, 20 seconds or so, and then we're going to go into a split lunge, where again, back leg is only for balance and you're pushing through this. Now, if this is done right and you have all the weight on the front leg, again, doing maybe 15 of those should be quite effortful on this. And then that would be 1 set, but we're going to change over then and do the exact same thing on the other leg. We're going to pair this exercise, which is exercise number 3, with exercise number 4, which is the forward lunge. Again, we want your groin and hip flexor to be able to cope with all these movements. It's well warmed at this stage, so let's go into the exercise. A key point in this is that all the intent is done with the front foot. So your front leg is doing all the work. You can see Sean is clearly pushing back off that front foot. Left leg is doing all the work. If it's body weight like this, again, we might be up at about 20 repetitions. And again, we're going to do this on both sides. So that's exercise number 4. So you would pair exercise number 3, which is the iso hold and the split lunge, with your forward lunge. And again, do 3 rounds of all of that before moving on to our 5th exercise, which is the step up exercise. So we're going to go in through it here. Key point is you're not pushing off the back leg at all. All the intent is down through this foot, head, knee and ankle all in one line, pushing down into the box or the chair, whatever you're using for this, standing all the way up tall and coming straight down nice and controlled. Decent pace to this one. We're really trying to build capacity in that leg. So if you're doing your body weight like this, again, you might be at anything between 20 and 30 repetitions. Just make sure you're not using the other leg to help you, that you're pushing down through this foot here. Let's just take a look at Sean doing a few more. Okay, so that's the 5th exercise in phase 2. And then you're going to pair that with the 6th exercise, which is the side lunge. So again, we look at Sean doing this. A couple of key pointers. We're doing this again on both legs. He's stepping to the side and there's clear intent with this outside foot. So he's pushing the ground away with the outside foot. You're going to feel a little bit of a stretch along the groin here. At this stage, after doing the phase 1 exercises and warming it up well, it'll be fine to cope with that. As you're doing it, just watch this little toe. This little toe is going to want to pop up. For this exercise, we're going to try and keep that toe there and all the work being done by this outside leg. It's our first introduction to moving in this plane, so we're going to keep it at about 10 to 15 repetitions. And again, we're going to do that on both sides. So there's your 6 exercises. Do them in pairs, doing about 3 rounds of that. How you would fit this into your overall program is you've got your phase 1 exercises, the initial ones that you were doing, 2 days on, 1 day off. After 2 weeks, you should be able to move on to phase 2, but it's more adding them in as opposed to just moving on. So what you're going to do is set up your week where you've got phase 1 exercises one day, phase 2 exercises the next day, rest the next day. Phase 1, phase 2, rest. Phase 1, phase 2, rest. So there's a little bit more variety. If you remember in phase 1, all the exercises were on your back and it's quite tedious, but it's really, really important to get that foundation in. So you might do that on a Monday, and on a Tuesday you're doing 3 or 4 rounds of these exercises here. And again, phase 2 will last for about 2 weeks. In phase 1, we're presuming you're coming from being quite sore and there's no other activity with it. In phase 2, if you're able to do a little bit of running, it's possible to start that with this. A very low level, so it might be like a 3 or 4 minute jog followed by a 2-minute walk. Now, depending on the severity of your symptoms, you might have to wait for another 2 weeks before you introduce this. There's a little bit of nuance in that depending on your own story and your own history with it all. But it is possible to add in some low level jogging with phase 2. That's the end of our phase 2 exercises, which brings us to about 4 weeks of rehab. In the next video, we're going to move on to phase 3 exercises, and we're definitely going to talk about increasing our running. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below or send us a message and we'd be glad to help.